The rain poured relentlessly over the city, its rhythm tapping against the windows of a small cafe tucked away in a quiet corner of downtown. Inside, Sophia Bennett, a 28-year-old lawyer with a sharp mind and a heart hardened by years of pain, sat at a corner table. Her laptop screen glowed faintly, displaying the image of Victor Blackwood, the powerful and ruthless chairman of Blackwood Industries. His face, cold and calculating, stared back at her. Sophia's lips curled into a faint, bitter smile. After years of waiting, she was finally ready to return and face the family that had destroyed hers. Sophia's life had once been idyllic. She grew up in a small, peaceful town where her father, a principled lawyer, was a beacon of justice for the underprivileged. But everything changed when Victor Blackwood, wielding his wealth and influence, orchestrated a lawsuit that ruined her father's career and reputation. The scandal left her family in shambles. Her father, unable to bear the shame, passed away shortly after, and her mother fell into a deep depression. At just 18, Sophia was forced to leave her hometown, carrying nothing but her grief and a burning desire for revenge. Now, 10 years later, Sophia had built a life for herself in the city. She was a successful lawyer, known for her intelligence and unyielding determination. But beneath her professional exterior, the wounds of the past still festered. She had spent years gathering information, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. That moment had finally arrived. The Blackwood family was hosting a grand gala to celebrate the 50th anniversary of their company, and Sophia had secured an invitation. It was her chance to infiltrate their world and bring them down from the inside. But there was one variable she hadn't accounted for. Ethan Blackwood, Victor's 30-year-old son and heir to the Blackwood empire. Ethan was known for his sharp business acumen and reserved demeanor, but unlike his father, he had a reputation for fairness and integrity. Sophia had always assumed that the apple didn't fall far from the tree, but as she delved deeper into her plan, she would discover that Ethan was far more complicated than she had imagined. The grand ballroom of the Blackwood estate was a dazzling display of wealth and power. Crystal chandeliers hung from the high ceilings, casting a golden glow over the room. The air was filled with the hum of polite conversation, the clinking of champagne glasses, and the occasional burst of laughter. Sophia Bennett stood at the entrance, her figure wrapped in an elegant black gown that hugged her curves perfectly. Her hair was swept into a sleek bun, and her crimson lips curved into a confident smile. She was a vision of poise and sophistication, but beneath the surface, her heart pounded with a mix of nerves and determination. This was it, her first step into the lion's den. Her eyes scanned the room until they landed on Ethan Blackwood, standing near the bar. He was tall, with broad shoulders and a sharp jawline that made him stand out even in a room full of powerful men. His dark hair was neatly styled, and his piercing blue eyes seemed to observe everything with a quiet intensity. He held a glass of whiskey in one hand, his posture relaxed but commanding. Unlike his father, who thrived on attention, Ethan exuded a quiet confidence that made people gravitate toward him. Sophia took a deep breath and made her way across the room, her heels clicking softly against the marble floor. As she approached, Ethan's gaze shifted to her, his expression unreadable. For a brief moment their eyes met, and Sophia felt a flicker of something unexpected. Curiosity, perhaps? She quickly pushed the thought aside. This wasn't the time for hesitation. "Mr. Blackwood?" she said, her voice smooth and confident. "I don't believe we've met. I'm Sophia Bennett." Ethan raised an eyebrow, his lips curving into a polite but distant smile. "Sophia Bennett," he repeated, his tone measured. "I don't recall seeing your name on the guest list." Sophia's smile didn't falter. "I'm here as a guest of one of your board members. I've heard so much about Blackwood Industries. I couldn't resist the opportunity to see it all firsthand." Ethan studied her for a moment, his gaze sharp and assessing. "Well, I hope it lives up to your expectations," he said finally, his tone neutral. "Enjoy the evening, Miss." He turned back to his drink, clearly dismissing her, but Sophia wasn't about to let him slip away so easily. She leaned slightly closer, her voice dropping just enough to catch his attention. I was hoping to speak with you, actually. I've been following your work with the company, and I must say, it's impressive. You've managed to modernize operations while maintaining the company's legacy. That's no small feat. Ethan glanced at her again, this time with a hint of interest. You've done your homework, he said, his tone softening slightly. Not many people bother to look beyond the headlines. Sophia smiled, sensing an opening. I believe in understanding the full picture, and from what I've seen, you're not just following in your father's footsteps, you're carving your own path. Ethan's expression shifted, a flicker of something pride, perhaps, crossing his face. That's the goal, he admitted, though it's not always easy. Sophia tilted her head, her eyes locking onto his. The things worth doing rarely are. For a moment there was a pause, a charged silence between them. Then Ethan nodded, a small smile tugging at the corner of his lips. You're right about that, Miss Bennett. Perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere quieter. Sophia's heart raced, but she kept her expression calm. I'd like that. Over the next few weeks, Sophia skillfully maneuvered her way into Ethan's life. She used her charm and intelligence to gain his trust, presenting herself as someone who admired his vision for the company. She even managed to secure a position as a legal consultant for Blackwood Industries, giving her access to the company's inner workings. Ethan, despite his initial reservations, found himself drawn to Sophia. She was unlike anyone he had met, sharp, confident, and unafraid to challenge him. Their conversations were a mix of intellectual debates and subtle flirtation, and Ethan began to look forward to their interactions. But for Sophia, every step closer to Ethan was a calculated move. She spent her days poring over company documents, searching for evidence of Victor Blackwood's crimes. At night, she replayed her conversations with Ethan, analyzing every word and gesture. She couldn't afford to let her guard down, not when she was so close to uncovering the truth. Despite her resolve, Sophia couldn't ignore the moments of connection that began to form between her and Ethan. One evening, after a long day at the office, Ethan invited her to join him for a drink. They sat in his private lounge, the city lights twinkling through the floor-to-ceiling windows. You're different from most people I've met, Ethan said, his voice thoughtful. You don't just tell me what I want to hear. Sophia sipped her wine, her gaze steady. I don't believe in flattery. I believe in honesty. Ethan chuckled softly. That's rare in my world. Sophia hesitated, her resolve wavering for just a moment. Maybe you need more people in your life who are willing to be honest with you. Ethan's eyes met hers, and for a brief moment, the walls between them seemed to crumble. But just as quickly, Sophia reminded herself of why she was there. This wasn't about connection or trust. This was about revenge. Weeks turned into months, and Sophia's position within Blackwood Industries gave her access to the company's most confidential files. Late at night, in the privacy of her apartment, she pored over documents, emails, and financial records. The deeper she dug, the more she uncovered about Victor Blackwood's ruthless tactics, bribery, blackmail, and the orchestrated lawsuit that had destroyed her father. Each discovery fueled her anger, reminding her of why she had come back. But as her plan progressed, so did her relationship with Ethan Blackwood. What had started as a calculated move to gain his trust was becoming something far more complicated. Ethan wasn't the cold, entitled heir she had imagined. He was thoughtful, driven, and surprisingly vulnerable. He spoke openly about his struggles to step out of his father's shadow and his desire to lead the company with integrity. These moments of honesty chipped away at the walls Sophia had built around her heart. One evening, after a particularly grueling day at the office, Ethan invited Sophia to dinner at his penthouse. The atmosphere was relaxed, a stark contrast to the formal events they usually attended. The two of them sat on the balcony, the city skyline stretching out before them, illuminated by the soft glow of the moon. You know, Ethan began, swirling the whiskey in his glass, I've spent my whole life trying to prove myself to my father, but no matter what I do, it's never enough. Sophia looked at him, her heart tightening at the raw emotion in his voice. Why do you feel like you have to prove anything to him? She asked softly. Ethan let out a bitter laugh. Because that's what being a Blackwood means. You're not allowed to fail. You're not allowed to be weak. My father built this empire with his bare hands, and he expects me to carry it forward, no questions asked. Sophia hesitated, torn between her mission and the growing empathy she felt for him. Maybe it's time to stop living for his expectations, she said finally. Maybe it's time to figure out what you want. Ethan turned to her, his blue eyes searching hers. And what about you, Sophia? What do you want? The question caught her off guard. For a moment, she considered telling him the truth about her father, about her plan, about everything. But the weight of her revenge held her back. Instead, she forced a smile. I want to make a difference, to stand up for what's right. Ethan nodded, his gaze lingering on her. You already do, more than you realize. The air between them grew heavy, charged with unspoken emotions. For the first time, Sophia felt the lines between her mission and her feelings blur. She had come here to destroy Ethan's family, but now she wasn't sure if she could go through with it. As the days passed, Sophia found herself increasingly conflicted. Her nights were spent uncovering Victor's crimes, but her days were filled with moments of connection with Ethan. He began to confide in her more, sharing his dreams of transforming Blackwood Industries into a company that prioritized ethics over profit. He even asked for her advice on how to navigate the board's resistance to his ideas. Sophia couldn't deny the admiration she felt for him. He wasn't like his father. He was trying to be better, to do better. And yet, he was still a Blackwood, the son of the man who had destroyed her family, the man she had sworn to bring down. One evening, as she sat alone in her apartment, staring at the evidence she had gathered, tears welled up in her eyes. She had spent years planning this moment, but now the thought of hurting Ethan felt unbearable. How had she let herself get so close to him? How had she let him get so close to her? The tension between Sophie and Ethan finally came to a head during a late-night meeting at the office. They had been working on a proposal for hours, the room lit only by the soft glow of a desk lamp. As they reviewed the final draft, their hands brushed, and both of them froze. Sophia looked up, her breath catching as she met Ethan's gaze. His eyes were filled with something she hadn't seen before: vulnerability, longing, and a hint of hesitation. Before she could stop herself, she leaned in, and their lips met in a kiss that was both tender and desperate. For a moment, the world fell away. There was no revenge, no secrets, no past, only the two of them. But as the kiss deepened, Sophia's mind screamed at her to stop. She pulled away, her heart racing. Can't, she stammered, stepping back. Ethan frowned, concern etched across his face. Sophia, what's wrong? She shook her head, unable to meet his gaze. I'm sorry, I need some time. Before he could say anything else, she grabbed her bag and hurried out of the office, leaving Ethan standing there, confused and hurt. Sophia's determination to expose Victor Blackwood reached its peak when she stumbled upon a hidden folder in the company's encrypted files. After weeks of late nights and careful digging, she finally found what she had been searching for: undeniable proof of Victor's crimes. The documents detailed the bribes he had paid to judges, the falsified evidence used to destroy her father's career, and the offshore accounts where he had hidden millions of dollars in illegal profits. As she stared at the damning evidence on her laptop screen, a wave of emotions crashed over her: anger, grief, and a deep sense of vindication. This was it, the proof she needed to bring Victor down and finally get justice for her family. But as she sat there, the weight of her plan began to sink in. Exposing Victor would inevitably drag Ethan into the scandal. His reputation, his career, and everything he had worked for would be destroyed, along with his father. Sophia closed her laptop, her hands trembling. She had spent years dreaming of this moment, but now, the thought of hurting Ethan made her stomach twist. Could she really go through with it? Could she destroy the man who had shown her kindness, who had trusted her, and who had unknowingly opened his heart to her? Sophia's hesitation proved costly. The next morning, as she prepared to finalize her plan, Ethan showed up at her apartment unannounced. He looked tense, his usual calm demeanor replaced by a storm of emotions. "Sophia," he said, his voice low and strained, "we need to talk." Sophia's heart sank. "Ethan, what's wrong?" He held up a folder, one of the files she had printed as part of her investigation. "I found this in your office," he said, his voice trembling with anger. "What the hell is this, Sophia? Why do you have these documents?" Sophia froze, her mind racing. She had been so careful, but somehow Ethan had found the evidence. She opened her mouth to explain, but the words wouldn't come. "Were you spying on me?" Ethan demanded, his voice rising. "On my family? Is that why you came here? To use me?" Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "Ethan, it's not what you think." "Then tell me the truth," he shouted, his frustration boiling over. "Why are you doing this?" Sophia took a deep breath, her hands shaking. "Because your father destroyed my family," she said finally, her voice breaking. "He ruined my father's career, drove him to his death, and left my mother and me with nothing. I came here to expose him, to make him pay for what he did." Ethan stared at her, his expression a mix of shock and betrayal. "So everything between us, it was all a lie?" "No," Sophia said quickly, stepping toward him. "It wasn't a lie. I didn't plan for this to happen, Ethan. I didn't plan to fall for you." Ethan shook his head, his jaw clenched. "You used me, Sophia. You lied to me. How am I supposed to believe anything you say?" Sophia reached for him, but he stepped back, his eyes cold. "I trusted you," he said quietly, "and you betrayed me." With that, he turned and walked out, leaving Sophia standing there, her heart shattered. Despite her heartbreak, Sophia knew she couldn't abandon her mission. She submitted the evidence to the authorities, ensuring that Victor Blackwood's crimes would be exposed. The news broke within days, sending shockwaves through the business world. Victor was arrested, and Blackwood Industries faced a massive public backlash. The company's stock plummeted, and board members scrambled to distance themselves from the scandal. Ethan, caught in the middle of the chaos, was forced to step down as CEO to protect what was left of the company. The media painted him as guilty by association, despite his efforts to reform the company. He retreated from the public eye, leaving Sophia to wonder if she would ever see him again. Months passed, and Sophia tried to move on with her life. She returned to her work as a lawyer, using her skills to help those who had been wronged, just as her father had once done. But no matter how much time passed, she couldn't forget Ethan. She replayed their moments together in her mind, haunted by the pain she had caused him. One evening, as she walked through the park near her apartment, she spotted a familiar figure sitting on a bench. Her heart skipped a beat as she realized it was Ethan. He looked different, tired, but somehow lighter, as if the weight of his family's legacy had finally been lifted. Sophia hesitated, unsure if she should approach him, but before she could decide, Ethan looked up and saw her. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then, slowly, Ethan stood and walked toward her. "I didn't think I'd see you again," Sophia said softly, her voice trembling. Ethan studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. "I didn't think I wanted to," he admitted, "but I've had a lot of time to think." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "Ethan, I'm so sorry for everything. I never meant to hurt you." Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "You hurt me, Sophia. But you also opened my eyes. My father, he wasn't the man I thought he was, and maybe I needed to see that." Sophia nodded, her heart aching. "I just wanted justice for my family, but I never wanted to lose you." Ethan's gaze softened, and he took a step closer. "I don't know if I can forget what happened," he said quietly, "but I also can't forget how I felt about you, how I still feel about you." Sophia's breath caught. "Ethan, He reached for her hand, his touch warm and familiar. "Maybe we can't change the past," he said, "but maybe we can try to build something new, together." Tears streamed down Sophia's face as she nodded. "I'd like that." The days following their reunion were not easy for Sophia and Ethan. While they had taken the first step toward reconciliation, the wounds of betrayal and heartbreak still lingered. They agreed to take things slowly, meeting for coffee or long walks in the park, where they could talk openly about their feelings. For the first time, there were no secrets between them. Ethan admitted how difficult it had been to come to terms with his father's crimes. "I spent my whole life trying to live up to his expectations," he confessed one evening as they sat on a bench overlooking the city skyline. "And now I realize I was chasing the approval of a man who didn't deserve it." Sophia placed her hand over his, her voice soft. "You're not your father, Ethan. You've always been better than him. That's why She hesitated, her heart pounding. "That's why I fell for you." Ethan looked at her, his expression a mix of pain and hope. "I want to believe that, Sophia, but trust doesn't come back overnight." "I know," she said, her voice trembling, "and I'll do whatever it takes to earn it." Determined to prove her sincerity, Sophia threw herself into helping Ethan rebuild his life. She used her legal expertise to assist in the restructuring of Blackwood Industries, ensuring that the company could recover from the scandal and operate with integrity. Together, they worked to implement new policies that prioritize transparency and ethical practices, transforming the company into a force for good. Sophia also reached out to the families and individuals who had been wronged by Victor Blackwood, offering them legal support and compensation. It was her way of honoring her father's legacy and making amends for the pain her actions had caused. Ethan watched her with a mixture of admiration and gratitude. Slowly but surely, the walls he had built around his heart began to crumble. He saw the woman he had fallen in love with, the woman who was strong, compassionate, and unafraid to fight for what was right. One evening, as they worked late in the office, Ethan surprised Sophia with a small box. She looked at him, confused, as he handed it to her. "What's this?" she asked, her brow furrowing. "Open it," he said, a faint smile playing on his lips. Sophia carefully lifted the lid to reveal a delicate silver bracelet with a single charm, a small engraved scale of justice. Her breath caught as she looked up at him. "I had it made for you," Ethan said, his voice soft, "to remind you of who you are. You've always fought for justice, Sophia, even when it wasn't easy, even when it cost you everything." Tears filled her eyes as she slipped the bracelet onto her wrist. "Ethan, I don't deserve this. I don't deserve you." Ethan stepped closer, his gaze steady. "You made mistakes, Sophia. So did I. But we're here now, and we have a chance to start over. If you're willing to try, so am I." Sophia nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm willing." Months later, Blackwood Industries had transformed into a company that reflected Ethan's vision. The media, once relentless in their criticism, began to recognize the changes he had made. Ethan's name was no longer tied to his father's crimes, but to his efforts to rebuild the company with integrity. Sophia, too, found a renewed sense of purpose. She started her own legal foundation dedicated to helping those who had been wronged by powerful corporations. Her work brought her a sense of fulfillment she hadn't felt in years, and she knew her father would have been proud. Ethan and Sophia's relationship grew stronger with each passing day. They learned to communicate openly, to forgive, and to support each other through the challenges they faced. Their love, once fragile and uncertain, became a source of strength for them both. One evening, as they stood on the balcony of Ethan's penthouse, watching the city lights twinkle below, Ethan turned to Sophia with a nervous smile. "There's something I've been meaning to ask you," he said, reaching into his pocket. Sophia's heart skipped a beat as he pulled out a small velvet box and dropped to one knee. "Sophia Bennett," he began, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "You came into my life when I least expected it. You challenged me, changed me, and made me a better man. I know we've been through more than most couples ever will, but I also know that I don't want to face the future without you. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Sophia's face as she nodded, her voice breaking. "Yes, Ethan, yes." Ethan slipped the ring onto her finger, and as he stood, she threw her arms around him, their laughter and tears mingling as they held each other close. The story concludes with Sophia and Ethan standing together, ready to face whatever the future holds. Their journey had been one of pain, betrayal, and redemption, but in the end, they found their way back to each other. Their love, forged in the fire of their struggles, became a testament to the power of forgiveness and the strength of the human heart. As they looked out over the city, hand in hand, they knew that their story was just beginning. Together they would build a life filled with love, purpose, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow.